What's up, folks? Today we're going to be taking a little look at a unique tool that was a lot more common back in the film days, but I think is still beneficial today in the digital era. Now, maybe you've seen some pictures of some directors of photography or even directors wearing things around their necks that look like little miniature magnifying glasses. And what those are a couple different tools to use for exposure. One of them is known as the Gaffer's glass, or sometimes referred to as the pan glass. Now, this little bad boy is used back in the day, so where the gaffer would use it to line up lights to make sure the beam was hitting the bounce card correctly or hitting the diffusion correctly. And as you know, most of the time you can't look directly into a light source, so you could look through this gaffer glass or pan glass, and they could directly look through it, looking directly at the light source, and then they would tell their assistant who's manning the light, they would say pan left, pan right, and that's how it came to have the nickname of pan glass. One of another benefits of it was that the glass was so dark you could actually look directly at the sun with it, and that way you could really monitor where it was in accordance with the clouds, meaning you could look at the sun and say, okay, it's behind that little cloud there, or it's about to be behind that cloud. And also you can use it to line up your diffusion perfectly with the sun. Make sure you're really getting all the beams through your diffusion or your bounce card or whatever the case may be. Now, I think that tool is still highly beneficial in today's digital world. I mean, just the fact that you can use it to look directly at the sun, to line it up with your diffusion, is pretty awesome. Essentially, all it is a huge dark glass, much like what you find in a welder's helmet. What I found is a 1000 times stop ND, or 1000x ND. Now, you can buy the gaffer / pan glass from different providers. It'll run you close to $100 for that little tool, but I'll show you how I was able to construct my own. But before we get to that, there is a second little tool, and sometimes it is confused with the gaffer / pan glass, but it's actually an entirely different tool altogether. It is the contrast viewing glass, or contrast filter viewing glass. Not to be confused with the gaffer / pan glass. A lot of times in my own research, I was digging up on these things, and a lot of people were getting the two confused or thought they were synonymous, when in fact they are not. The gaffer / pan glass is exactly what I told you it was, whereas the contrast viewing filter was a lot more common in the film days, before we had monitors with false color and all of that. And essentially it was like a really dark ND, like around 7 or 8 stops, and you could look at your scene through it, and it kills all the highlights and really brings all the highlights down, and where you can really look at contrast. You can see exactly where your shadows are, you can see exactly where your highlight roll off is. And now here's where people would say, who needs that nowadays? But if you're someone like me who suffers with certain color problems, such as it's really impossible for me to see pinks, red and greens tend to look the same, all the blue and purplish colors all meld into one pot. When it comes to me, that's just a certain kind of color blindness that I tackle with. So you can see where false color for me can be a little bit of a chore, having to figure out all the colors. So if you're like that, if you're one of these rare colorblind camera guys, the contrast viewing filter may be highly beneficial for you as well. Now, those run brand new. Tiffen still make them for about $50. So if you wanted both of these tools brand new, it would run you $150. I'll put links down in the description below, or you can do what I did. Now, I already had a director's ViewFinder. Now, these are cool to have. I've used these quite often before I bought the Artemis Pro app for my iPad. And this one is made by Canon, but they come in all different flavors, and I'll put a link down in the description below if you're interested in one of these. Sometimes some people just like to have these around their neck just to look cool or whatever, but it's actually hugely beneficial if you're working on a project and you're not also the director, and you have to, you know, pass this over to your director, and you're working with all prime lenses. It actually makes for a pretty nice scenario without having to, you know, keep swapping lenses on your camera. And this is great too, because this one comes with old 4:3 TV formats, Super 35, Super 16, and all the different aspect ratios, 1:66, 16:9, 185, 235, 255. So you also get all your anamorphic modes, and from all the way from a 10 millimeter focal length to essentially 400 millimeter focal length. So you get a lot of different options out of this bad boy. And what I came to find out is that this has filter threads on it. So I dug around in the office here and found an old step-up adapter, because this is a 37 millimeter filter thread. I had a 37 to 52 millimeter step-up ring, so I just attached that to there. And then I went on Amazon and found some really cheap NDs to create my own Gaffer Glass and contrast viewing filter, because it also works out well, because now I can look directly at the exact aspect ratio of my scene and throw on the contrast viewing filter, which essentially is just an ND. It's a variable ND, right? Now you can find these pretty cheap because ND filters are less expensive the smaller they are, and since you only need a 52 millimeter filter here, I mean, this thing runs you like 15 bucks. Because here's the thing, you're not attaching this to your camera, so you don't need like the best variable ND you can find. You just need a little cheap one that's gonna cut down all the highlights for you so you can really see the contrast in your scene. And the fact that it's variable makes it really nice because you can adjust this based on the brightness of your lights. For me, it is a no-brainer because, like I said, I have a lot of trouble reading false color. Now, the other cool thing is you can swap this out, right? And I found this 1000X ND, which is super, super dark. Essentially, this is like a welder's glass. And I was able to look directly at the sun with this bad boy outside, as you can see in this example here. And you can pick this thing up for like, I don't know, $15 off Amazon. I think they run as cheap as $8. So I'm gonna put links to all of this stuff down in the description below. All different options for you guys if you wanna get, you know, the actual glass pieces for about 150 bucks for both of them, or if you just want to kind of build your own little set, or if you even already have a director's viewfinder and you can just get these little different stops of ND. You can get the 1000X for your Gaffer Glass, and then you can get a little variable ND so you can have your own little contrast viewing filter. And yeah, I just thought I'd share that with you guys, just little tools, little things to help you guys out when you're out there working in the field. Now, I do want to also announce that the Dog Times Productions Patreon community has been launched. I'll put a link down in the description below, just so you guys know YouTube is now going to be exclusively only with gear reviews and different little tools that I find. Everything else involving clients or, you know, actual real world work, behind the scenes, lighting breakdowns, tutorials, all that stuff is going to be made exclusively available on Patreon. And also something fun is we are going to be doing like a full access behind the scenes pass on our entire journey working on the feature film. Obviously some things will be limited, but since it is not like a super, super big budget movie, we have a little bit more leniency. Now there are a couple B-list actors in it, but it should be a lot of fun just showing the entire process from the pre-production phase, working with the director, all the days that we'll be shooting on set. It's at least 2 weeks worth of work, and then everything coming post of that, and we can look, and because we're going to be doing the color grading on that as well, because it is so low budget, because it is like a B horror movie. So yeah, if you're interested in any of the other things, or if you are one of those fans of the kind of breakdowns and tutorials that I used to do on this channel, all of that stuff is moving to Patreon. So yeah, you can check that out there. I'll put a link down in the description below. And yeah, I hope you guys check out the Gaffer and contrast viewing filters and start using them in your day-to-day shoots. As always, thanks for watching. And for now, that is a wrap.